gentlemen, welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I'm, of course, Nick McDaniel, and as always, I am joined by my buddy Myron.
Yes, the show's so great, we're doing it the third time, folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing, man. We've done this show like 4 or 5 years ago. Then we did it a little like 2 years ago, and I think we're going to try it again. And the funny thing is both of our cards have changed every single time, and we'll explain that in a little bit in more detail, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you're asking. Like, hey, we told you last week when we recorded, time travel when I say that because it's hard in our head to say last week, right? So on last week's episode, we told you this episode was going to be recorded over the weekend. It's going to air in our usual time slot on Thursday morning. It'll be there for you. But, you know, we told you specifically, if you were a member over at patreon.com/tappedoutpod, you'd have it Sunday because I'm going to get this thing up we're recording it on Sunday. I'm going to get it up. So you'll literally have this thing 4 or 5 days ahead of time, depending on how fast I can get it up on Patreon, anyway. So eventually when it comes out, that's why we tell you, man, there's some goodies and reasons to sign up over there, little extras we throw. I've been doing the daily mind dump every once in a while when I can think, when something just kind of strikes the chord and I have to say it. That's where I'm dumping those. They're not on podcasts. They're just, and then sometimes they're 2-3 minutes.
Secrets,
just
places where Nick divulges his feelings and innermost thoughts about professional wrestling.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's something else, man. That's for sure. But make sure you're signing up over there. But man, look, do you want to get the commercial out of the way, Myron, or do you want
to knock it out?
Let's get the commercial out. Once we do this, check out our friends over at Prize Picks.
You still working on this?
It's 2 minutes to kickoff. Who do I pick?
2 words, Prize Picks. It's so easy. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. It's just you against the numbers. Simply pick the over-under on 2 or more players, and that's it. You can win up to 10 times your money in just one day. Join over 150,000 people who found a better way to play. Download the Prize Picks app today and get your first deposit match up to $100.
We greatly appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, always.
Oh, you playing last night? Saw you playing Prize Picks last night.
I was playing last night while we were at Anarchy. That's correct. And I was actually playing right before we recorded this. You probably saw me slamming my picks in right before we went on before we started recording anyway. So, but hey, first and foremost, man, I'm gonna lay out the rules. So Patreon members, as soon as you get us your cards at tappedoutpod@gmail.com. The guys who listen on a regular basis over on YouTube, Spotify, all those places where you're subscribing. And make sure you are, by the way. Make sure you're subscribing somewhere. Where if it's YouTube, make sure you are subscribing and clicking that little bell to get your notifications. So when things drop early, you'll actually get those and you'll know about it, including little matches that we're throwing in randomly and that kind of stuff. But we want to see your Ultimate Wrestlemania cards. But there are rules. And the rules are as follows. So it's 8 matches. Yes, 8 matches. But here's the complicated part. You get 2 attraction matches that don't require title belts. Then you have to have 6 title defenses. 1 is going to be for the WWE Championship. 1 will be either or the World or the Universal title. We kind of lumped them because of the way they kind of worked in unison there.
Yeah.
The Intercontinental title, the United States title, the tag team titles. It can be either the tag team championships from old, the Raw, the Smackdown, but you only get 1 tag team title defense that you have to pick from, and then of course a women's championship. We didn't do the women's tag belts. They're still kind of relatively new. There's not like a lot of lineage there there's been 2 matches.
2 manias.
So we didn't throw that one in. We didn't do that one yet. It'll maybe, hey, when we do this in 2 or 3 more years, then it'll probably be on the card.
Yes.
Everybody's like, well, that's pretty easy. Not exactly. By the way, every wrestler can only wrestle once. So basically, this is the difficult part. For giving you an example, I'll use a match that's not on my list. Spoiler alert a little bit here. If you used Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, you can't have Brock Lesnar in another match on the card for your Ultimate. You also can't have a match, let's say, where if one of your favorites was Triple H in a WWE title match, that match can't be used because you've already used the WWE title.
And think about it. At 15, we had Triple H, Foley, The Rock, and Big Show all in the title match.
Correct.
That was on my card. It would have blew the whole card out of the water. I had to take it out.
So those are the things to keep in mind. Every title has to be defended. WWE, World Universal, Intercontinental, United States, Women's Championship, and Tag Championship. 2 attraction matches, and only wrestlers can wrestle once. Oh, and by the way, the kicker is, everybody might be slightly confused, we are talking about matches that actually happened on a WrestleMania card. You can't make dream matches. Like, it's literally matches that have happened across the past 37 years.
3 times doing this, God knows how many hours. I put about 3 hours preparing this before we ever sat down to do this today. Lots of information. Lots of stuff to pour over. Changing viewpoints. I don't have my picks from the first one. I didn't listen to it. We listened to the last one to get my current set of picks and we could review it. And there's some changes. There's some stuff that's never going to go away on me. I'm going to have it every time I do this. I'm going to have at least 2, maybe 3 of these matches on there.
Yep. So without further ado, man, let's kind of jump right in, man. And we're going to go back and forth. We're basically built a card and kind of said, okay, this would be your first match, Myron.
My first match is a kicker. It's the WrestleMania 16. It is for the Intercontinental and the the European title. It is a 2 falls 3-way match. Kurt Angle, who had both belts, versus Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. How do you get that much action? How do you get that much talent? How do you get that much anything going on? Kurt Angle never was pinned, yet lost both belts. Okay? that is the epitome of a 3-way dance match where the champion doesn't have to lose the belt. He lost the belt twice and never was. So this to me is an epic match for WrestleMania.
Plus, one could argue it's 3 of the best wrestlers ever just to go into the ring. Right.
Yes.
That doesn't hurt, right?
No. It's a great one. Go back and watch it, folks. I think you'll really enjoy this.
I agree with you, man. It was a great match. My first match up on the card, and everybody's going to be kind of thrown for a loop when we say my opening match is John Cena versus Rusev for a United States title, because I had to get this title obviously on there. This is one of my favorite ones. Yeah. And of course, John Cena didn't fit in other matches, and I'd used other people in other matches of his I liked better. So it got complicated. And that's the challenge. But it was, it was, Rusev had been on a roll. You know, he came out on the tank. Him and Lana were kind of, is this peak Rusev, I guess, at this point, you would say?
This is the best he ever did. I think this is about the time, did they realize they'd been married or got married and the whole scandal dropped? This is, to me, outside of the Hell in a Cell match with Roman Reigns, just the best thing Rusev ever did in his WWE career.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, I think it was, like I said, I think this is peak Rusev. And of course, is it peak Cena that Cena is the one who puts the ding on the career and, so forth and so on. But I liked it because I think that was one of the big spectacles, him riding out in the tank. And, Cena coming back again and, doing what he does. So, but hey, that leads us to your next match.
I will dial the clock back 10, 11 years before for WrestleMania 20 for Cena's first WrestleMania appearance and Cena's first title win versus Big Show. How amazing is it to see that this show, WrestleMania 20, 18 years ago this year, Cena made his debut. He cheated, okay? He beat Big Show. He went on to be a popular DC Comics superstar. This is the birth of the star of John Cena. This is where John Cena was established. This is where, when they still called it the FU, when things were, too good. Too good right here. You can't underestimate the significance of this match in popular culture. Not just wrestling, popular culture.
It was truly the launching pad, in my opinion, of John Cena and where he would go on and become. So, very similarly, in my next match at WrestleMania 31, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. It's funny because everybody's like, well, we've seen it. This year we're going to see it for the third time, main event in WrestleMania. But the kicker of this entire match was that is Seth Rollins actually cashed in the Money in the Bank to defeat both of them to become the champion. So that this one was, like I said, for the WWE title, and it was one of the more in modern history of WrestleMania. To me, it was one of the more. It wasn't shocking, but it was at the same time to see Seth take this.
Was very important for the Tapped Out Wrestling podcast because I watched this show at your house. One of the Manias I watched at your house when you used to have WrestleMania parties. And I still remember the electricity of Seth running down the ramp.
Yeah.
With that briefcase. God, the drama.
And funny, that might be actually why it's there as well, is because it was one of the first ones, like right before we started the podcast and everything. And we were kind of, because we started that August after that. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
well, oh, damn.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's kind of, so that may be why. That might have been, it was probably the launching pad in my head of where I started buying the equipment and started getting going, and then we ended up starting it in August or something like that. Could very well be, but, wow, boy, does time fly.
Yeah, and we're aging, but we still need to clean a few things up.
That's right, man. Check out some of our newest supporters, our friends over at Manscape.
Whoa, personal foul.
What the feezy?
You can't use a beard trimmer below the 50-yard line. This is the waterproof lawnmower 4.0 by Manscaped.
What's the difference?
It's got new skin-safe technology to help reduce cuts and nicks. It's powerful, yet gentle, just like me.
Dog, I appreciate you. Boop. Hey, watch out. I'm not ticklish. Get yours at manscaped.com.
That's right, man. Look, we're all getting there, and everybody, you got to keep clean and you got to keep tidy. So check out, man, our friends over at manscaped.com. Make sure in the show notes, we'll actually have the link there to help support the show, obviously through Manscaped as well.
That's old No Nick right there.
That's what we're hoping for anyway. So let's keep it rolling, brother. Head on into your next one.
Number 1 tag team match. Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Classy Freddie Blassie, the U.S. Express, Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham with Albano. The epitome of that era. You had your stereotypical evil foreign heels. You had your classy Freddie Blassie from the old days. You had your Albano, and you had your budding young stars, the hot young U.S. Express. One of the things this match is significant for, this is the first title win ever at a WrestleMania. That's important to me. First title win ever at a WrestleMania. The bad guys won. Okay? This is one that identifies with me because the first ever autograph I ever got was Mike Rotunda on a program with the U.S. Express on the cover in Birmingham. This whole thing to me epitomizes the wrestling I watched as a child. This is good. Was just classic.
It's old school, man. It's just old school wrestling, man. And there's nothing wrong with a little thing tugging at the heartstrings about, matches you love. So, But I decided to go the next on mine as a tag team match as well. Of course, it is TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. Edge, Christian, the Dudleys, and the Hardys. Listen, this was, when they worried about to follow up the first one, like, what do we do to follow that one up, and how do we do, they did a few smoke and mirrors. They got Rhino, Spike Dudley, Lita involved, so that kind of helped spice it up, give it a little bit of extra kind of thing. But looking back, so doing some of the research to do this episode, you're looking, like I wanted to look at all of the tag matches at all the WrestleManias, and I worked my way backwards. To me, correct me if I'm wrong, this ended it. like after here, like I couldn't see anything, and I'm not knocking the people who work the matches and all that stuff. I didn't see anything at a WrestleMania again in a tag match for tag team titles, that especially in the last decade, nothing even as significant as this.
No, and also the thing about this is it changed tag team wrestling for good. These were to me, the three most innovative tag teams in the history of tag team wrestling. And they did this level of violence and tricks and stunts and stuff. Amazing.
You still see every WrestleMania package, right? Yeah. Edge, the spear, boom, off the ladders, and all that.
You still see this at half the indie shows we go to. Okay, think about it. Does this match influence more in independent wrestling in the shows we go to than any other match in history?
I mean, could be, man. I'm just saying, in general, it's a pretty, I just think after that, listen, there could be some negative to this. Some people could say it pushed it as far as it ever should have went. And nobody should ever try to go back beyond that. And obviously they have. So look, I'm not saying, but look, for me, nostalgia history wise, it's the greatest tag team title defense, at WrestleMania. Yeah, so there's that.
One. It's an amazing one.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go with my first attraction match. In honor of the year of retirement for the great Triple H, we look back at WrestleMania 12, 26 years ago today. Triple H makes his WrestleMania debut on an undefeated streak, accompanied by the future Sable. Okay? He gets squashed by the Ultimate Warrior, who had been away for 3 years after a positive drug test. Okay? It doesn't have to be good to be an attraction, folks. This is the debut on WrestleMania of a man who would go on to shape probably more WrestleManias than anybody in history. If he was not behind the camera, he was in front of it. And Triple H, that's one of my all-time favorites. His debut, ending the Warrior, basically. He didn't end the Warrior's career, but this is the Warrior beating him was the genesis of Triple H that went on to become the future of the WWE. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. I'm going to continue on with my next match is going to be for the world title. Be WrestleMania 30, Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan, and Batista. So this match had a lot of backstory. My notes were very, very long for this one because, it's one of those, like, even looking back in hindsight, like, Batista came back. He was supposed to be, loved, and he was supposed to be the good guy. He was supposed to fight Orton. Daniel Bryan in an interview even said, like, he was not supposed to be in this match. I think he was supposed to wrestle Sheamus or something. I think that's what. Yeah, I think as I was digging up, they were like, "Oh, he was supposed to wrestle Sheamus or something at that card." The problem for the WWE, the fans got so behind Daniel Bryan. Like, this is the Yes movement at its peak. By the way, that's we're looking at 8 years ago, and fans are still in the crowds throwing the fingers up and screaming, and chanting yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And to me, this was the peak, the mountaintop of the Yes movement. The fans kind of got their way. They booed Batista. Batista was born. That whole thing, which was just nuts. That you just assumed he would have come back. Everybody would have loved him.
Yeah.
But it's a whole feud with Daniel Bryan and the Authority. Daniel Bryan not only is in this match, but to get to this match, he had to defeat Triple H earlier in the night, which he does. And that, that was just kind of a baffling, thing that the flip side of it was, look, when he got there was no doubt he was winning. Like, he had to win. Mm-hmm. There's no way WrestleMania was going off of the air and people just pissed off because he lost. It wasn't going to happen, but 70,000 people chanting, yes, 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 the confetti falling, all of that stuff. Is it one of the best endings of a WrestleMania of all time?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So And look, full disclosure here, I did cheat a little bit. It was for both titles, but I was like, but it was for the world title, so I had to. That's what I used it as my world title match. But yeah, man. And listen, say what you want. I don't know that this match even further shot Daniel Bryan into the stratosphere of superstardom to even where he already was. Because think about it, WWE could have chosen to just push him down, not care what the fans thought, just completely shove him down, not have him not even have him in the match, and just keep pretending they didn't hear it. Now, they're not that stupid, I would hope, and they didn't. But they could have. And where's Daniel Bryan now if that were the case? So that's why this match holds importance. I think this actually really catapulted him to that next level.
I agree 100%. For my second attraction match, I'm going to dial it back to WrestleMania 36, the first two-nighter. The match with all cinematic matches will be judged. With the Undertaker going into the Hall of Fame, I think this match had to be added. It wasn't on the last show because it hadn't happened yet. Guys, if in a time where COVID had shut down and this WrestleMania was from the Performance Center, okay? We still got the whole thing with the American Badass getting a great ending, okay? We got the mysterious Undertaker riding away victorious in his last match, finishing WrestleMania at 25-2. People don't like cinematic matches, but they are a reality that we have to deal with now. There's something that's a part of the wrestling community. This is the standard by which all cinematic matches are judged, in my opinion. I say number 2 would have to be Final Deletion. But this was something special. It had all of that WWE money behind it. Fire, druids, motorcycles, hearses, everything. AJ's hand sticking up to the grave to leave you with that as the Undertaker rides off. What a fitting ending to a wonderful career. An amazing career.
Yep. Done well. There should be more of these. There should be more, cinematic matches, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There will be in the future.
I was very big fan. So, but swinging all the way to the other pendulum of wrestling, my next match is from WrestleMania 3, Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage. I mean, listen, arguably, and people, it's the measuring stick at which intercontinental matches were made. Look, you could argue Shawn and Razor ladder match, maybe. But this seems to be that benchmark match. I mean, it's just like they had the great lead up where, Savage took the ring the bell and hit Steamboat in the throat and, is he going to be there? George Steele's involved. Miss Elizabeth is involved. So you've got all the little extra icing on the cake. But good God Almighty, they went in there and, we hear this tale of, Randy Savage just overplanned this thing to no end, right? Blase, blase, blah. But it doesn't matter, man. They put on probably, like I said, what some people argue one of the best matches in wrestling history.
Could possibly be. Not cinematic at all. Guys, this match has stood up the test of time, that it's something people always talk about. I was a young child. I didn't know what a good wrestling match was, but I knew this was a good wrestling match,
right.
Because of the way the story was told and everything else. Captivated me. Totally captivated me.
It's a match the smart fan loves, and even a casual fan will sit there and love. That's a good match. I think that's a lost art where a lot of times people think because a lot of times now you almost have to work a style where you appease this type of fan or this type of fan.
Yes.
And I'm like, go back and watch WrestleMania 3. They gave both audiences what they wanted. So
very, very, very close to a conversation we had with Matt Hankins last night about the different styles of wrestling.
Yep.
Such a brilliant man. WrestleMania 35, the first ever women's main event, features Charlotte and Rhonda both holding titles, Becky with no title, in a 3-way match that led to the Becky 2 belts, everything that built Becky's career, the man, the whole 9 yards. This is where Becky Lynch was made. She was already good, and she was big enough to main event WrestleMania. But after this is where she was made. This made women's championship wrestling, in my opinion. This is the match that put it on the main event of WrestleMania, and they did not disappoint. What do you think they would have done if they'd have picked a women's match to main event WrestleMania and the women had disappointed? No. They're going to put Becky. It was a whole convoluted story, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Becky and Rhonda had the match because Becky won the Royal Rumble. Becky gets hurt, can't compete, or she's suspended, something like that. I can't remember what the details were. Then here comes Charlotte. Charlotte gets in. So once they put Charlotte in, Charlotte to me was the one who was there to make sure the match went off perfectly. Okay? Charlotte was the Daniel Bryan, the safety valve to make sure the matches got executed properly. And 2 titles on the line, not a unification match, 2 titles on the line. Huge deal. This is one of those matches that when the Mania went off, I was like, oh, God, that was such an impressive match.
And listen, a lot of people don't like the Ronda Rousey being in that match. First of all, she was a champion, so, it wasn't what it was. But my thing was, that's why, remember that argument we had? Because back in this, by the way, this was my women's match at the last show when we did this episode. It's obviously not now. I have a different one. But it was because I was kind of in the moment of, this is how they became the main event, was because they used the 3 biggest names, including one that transcended pro wrestling.
Yes.
So, yes. But 2 years later, my brain, as I went through and watched other, old WrestleManias, I was like, this to me is the most important women's wrestling match. It was at WrestleMania 32, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch for then it was the Divas Championship. But the reason why it's, to me, was such a big deal, this is where Lita unveils, basically, we're scrapping this Divas title, and we're going to have a WWE Women's Championship. Thank goodness. To me, it was it was really kind of the final nail in the coffin of the Diva era. And look, I know there were women who held that title that were really good in the ring and who were great wrestlers, and it's not a knock on them, but it was to me the era where they acknowledge women are great athletes. They're not bra and panty matches or wrestling in mud and pudding or whatever. Like, we're gonna go back and they're going to be right up there with, and think about it, a couple years later, they're main event of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I don't think a Divas title is main eventing WrestleMania.
No.
So that was kind of my big, but of course you got to have at that time 3 of the best wrestlers, in the world and still are. Absolutely. So it basically, Charlotte going over, issuing it, bringing in the new era, I think was significant. And so in importance to me, I think that's why it was such a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Solid reasoning. I got to applaud you on that one. For the Universal title, I'm going to go to the last WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan's last WrestleMania. I hope it's not his ever last WrestleMania appearance. Okay? But it was Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman Reigns. The jokes about how Daniel Bryan inserted himself into this, all the little memes and stuff that were made, can't overplay the significance of how great Edge has been on his comeback. How they put this belt on Roman Reigns, who's been the champion ever since. Okay? Roman Reigns, who's doing the best storytelling right now. Roman Reigns being the 5th heel to ever win a WrestleMania title match main event. Ever. And go on to be the most solid heel in the company. And they built this last year all around him. So where we are going into WrestleMania 38 is dependent on this match.
Yeah.
3-way match, I'm not the biggest fan of, but this match built Roman Reigns from that. I'm not saying he was a laughingstock, but no one ever took him seriously until this, in my opinion. This last year has made him and established him as a legitimate wrestling champion.
I agree.
And the future of the company right now is everything they're doing hinges from this match.
Yeah, and again, kudos to Edge. Like you said, his run has been phenomenal, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Heading into this Mania, I think the three of them, great dance partners and pulled a great job. Like I said, without them, literally that's the first step up the ladder for Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these two guys were not climbing the ladder. They were at the peak. I mean, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Listen, there's so much, at this point. I always, and I said this, listen, I've said it probably 4 years ago. I said it 2 years ago. Listen, in an interview, I heard Shawn Michaels say, I don't know that I've ever wrestled a perfect match, but if I did, it was this one.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's like, there's, they did the good versus evil. Shawn came down from the rafters in the white suit. Taker came up through the stage in the black. So that was kind of that, the metaphors there. It was like, and by the way, this was the penultimate, easy for me to say, penultimate match in there. Because think about this. They put on arguably the greatest WrestleMania match, period. But they would go on to set up literally a year later at 26, the streak versus the career, of Shawn, how that went. And also in a weird way, it was the first chapter of a 4-chapter book with Taker and Triple H kind of, because that's what it was. It was, there was this match, Shawn loses. Then he wants to beat him so bad, he puts his career on the line. He loses. Triple H wants revenge at the next one, and then he loses. And then he wants to, go on and have the big brawl, like, the end it all, whatever they call it. I can't remember, the end of an era match kind of thing. So it was the first chapter of 4 in that story, in my opinion. And people say storytelling doesn't happen anymore, right? That does, but I just, I'm just saying. Now, I think at the core, I don't believe any of us ever thought that Shawn was going to end the streak there. Because remember, at this point, we were all smart enough that they were clearly going to give it to some young guy. Some young guy's going to want to beat the streak, right? In hindsight, like, it's funny, and I'm not saying I'm right here. This is just a statement. I asked myself, knowing what we know now about the streak being ended just years later to Brock Lesnar, and it wasn't a young guy, it wasn't anything about whatever. Would have this been, in hindsight, would I have made this the match where he lost? Let Shawn beat him.
Shawn didn't need to go anywhere, though. Shawn didn't need the elevation of beating Taker and ending the streak.
He didn't, but in hindsight, I don't know that I don't dislike Shawn beating him any more than I like Brock beating him. Like I can almost. Brock's more legitimate, and I understand that. Like, as far as like a brawling monster beast, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But Shawn was like, that time, Shawn was the greatest wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
Arguably, I get it, whatever. But I would still say Shawn Michaels is arguably the greatest wrestler, top to bottom. Mike, wrestling ring, anyway, whatever, all that good stuff.
Mm.
So this match will never, I don't care how many years we do this card, this match will be on this card more than likely. It's going to take something just out of this world to take this match off the card.
Mm.
So,
I get it. I get that 100%.
Yeah,
it was a beautiful, beautiful piece of work.
Kind of like you with this next one.
Yes, I can't ever take this one off. WrestleMania 3, Hogan Andre in the biggest main event in sports entertainment. Okay. The unstoppable, at the time, unslammable, even though he'd been slammed before.
Right.
Nobody ever slammed him before. Okay?
Kayfabe.
You have the celebrities, once again, featured heavily here. All the way, they were doing it at WrestleMania number 1, folks. WrestleMania number 3, for the main event, you had Bob Uecker as the guest ring announcer. And I don't know if anybody knows who Mary Hart from Entertainment Tonight was, but at the time, probably the best looking woman on earth. And also, in a very important show, when you didn't have the internet to learn out what was going on, you had Entertainment Tonight. guys, this was so important for wrestling. This match right here was the one that's, in my opinion, cemented WrestleMania as an event. This is the third one. This is the reason, to me, you had your first one, you had your second one. This is the reason why you have your 38th, because this match was the biggest thing ever. Okay? Hogan, Andre, storytelling. Think about it. David and Goliath, even though David is Hulk freaking Hogan, for Christ's sakes. Okay? A beautiful thing. Beautiful match. Something you have to see to love it. To me, Hogan was made here. This is the match, in my opinion, that led to everything Hogan ever did. Even though he was established beforehand, this is the match that made him larger than life.
The literal passing of the torch from Andre to Hogan. I agree with that. And here's the funny thing. By this point, I had already become a dumb enough wrestling fan. Like, I knew too much for my own good. Like, I didn't want to see this. Hogan can't work, and Hogan can't, and knowing the things you know now, you're like, dude, he worked everybody, whatever. But in hindsight now, you can look it back and say the significance of the event. And, it was funny. I sat in a seminar and heard something that just, your head will explode. He said, Al Snow said, WrestleMania 3. And I fell into this trap. Think about it. He says, what was the best match on the card? Everybody immediately says Steamboat and Savage. He goes, was it? He goes, what did everybody pay to come see? And it was Hogan Andre. He goes, the other stuff was icing. The match that drew the 90 and whatever, 90,000 people, blah, 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 we know.
Pontiac Silverdome.
He goes, it was Hogan and Andre. He goes, like, it doesn't matter. That's what the people paid to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's Hogan and Andre, man. It'll always be Hogan Andre.
Always be Hogan Andre. And then 15 years later, what did Hogan do? When you thought he was too old, when you thought he didn't have it in him,
yeah,
what did Hogan do?
He comes back, and at WrestleMania 18, he wrestles The Rock. Now, this is NWO. This is Hollywood Hogan. He comes back into, and it's like they're at Toronto. And, the legend goes that, they get out to the ring. Everybody was under the assumption, babyface, Rock, heel Hogan, blah, blah, blah. They get out to the ring, and the fans just don't react the way they think they're going to. They're cheering for Hogan. They're booing Rock. And supposedly, per the story, if you listen to The Rock and Hogan tell the story, they basically improvised it. When they were at the middle of the ring, they basically just kind of turned the story and like, look, we're going to go, we're going to change this. We're going to, go the different route. So they worked the match a different style, gave the fans what they wanted. I will continue to tell this story as many times as I have to. If you turn this match off, like volume, if you turn the volume off during this match,
yes,
it is absolutely nothing special. And so you cannot watch this match on mute. But I will tell you, if you watch the match with the sound on, it will actually define to what I tell people. That's what a wrestling match is. Those guys don't go out there. They don't do anything crazy. They don't do anything. They just took those fans, put them in the palm of their hands, and took them for a ride.
Beautiful thing to watch. Just a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah.
You showed me this match. I had not seen it before. I had, my wrestling fandom had lapsed for a while. And you showed me this match, and I was like, well, this should suck. And watching the electricity that went through this match, watching two people who knew how to work a crowd do this and show sports entertainment. That's sports entertainment. That's what professional wrestling used to be. This is terrific. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Probably one of the most beautiful things you'll ever hear.
Yeah, and it is. It's look, if Shawn and Taker are the best wrestling match I've ever seen, you know, at a WrestleMania, arguably, come on, that's the whole point of these cards, these lists, and things that people do. Hogan and Rock is easily one match that I tell wrestlers they should watch. What do I know? But I'm just saying, you can just humor me and watch it, and you'll understand what I mean by it. Yeah. Because it will clearly show you, like, the fans getting taken for a ride. Now, the fans are all in it. They're all behind it. But, yeah, still arguably one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. Guess what? The hard part is, hey, did I build a shitty card? Well, maybe from the aspect of those two matches going back to back, yes, that would be hard. You would be just drained after either. So I'm not saying that was the order I would put the card in. It's just kind of build in the sense I probably would put something in between there to give you a rest. I mean, do I put Cena and Rusev in between there to give people a rest? I mean, something like that.
Could be.
Yeah. So we weren't asking you to do your cards and, you know, in order.
There's no way to build it in order because of the emotional aspect all these matches had. We didn't put these matches on here because they were technical wrestling. You know, we're not looking at like Okada and Kenny Omega or anything like that. We're going to get 5 and 10 stars. We looked at stuff that motivated us as wrestling fans. Yeah. And that's what we are. We're wrestling fans. These are the matches that worked us. These are the matches that made us believe. These are the matches that had great significance as far as wrestling.
All right. Speaking of fans, we love to, you know, hey, if you are a fan of the show, make sure so go over to patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Become a member over there. Like I said, we cut this show early. We cut it on Sunday. You could have had it early. You could have had us. You could think about it this way. You could have had us your list before this episode even aired because you would have had time to work on it, and you could have emailed it over, you know, to us at tappedoutpod@gmail.com. But of course, that it is patreon.com/tappedoutpod. And you know, we always ask you to look, if you're not a Patreon member, subscribe anywhere there's a podcast platform, whether it's iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, everywhere they have podcasts, we're there. Give us a subscribe if you're a podcast listener. If you like us over at YouTube, man, make sure, again, subscribe on there. But you got to click that little bell, man, so that way you get the notifications when stuff comes. Because, hey, listen, we're super happy that everybody seems to be completely, look, what are we, 8 weeks now? 6-8 weeks transitioned over to YouTube now. Look, I'm thrilled. Had conversations with people about it. Like, I'm completely happy with the move. Glad we did. And it seems like, you know, like a lot of people love it over on YouTube. So, you know, make sure you're subscribing, turning those notifications on. And hey, while you're at it, how about a 5-star rating and review on the podcast platforms? If you've got a few minutes, we greatly appreciate that as well. Does wonders for us. So, and of course, man, again, we like this show, and again, we've done it a couple times, and it does change. But the reason why we do it is because we also, heading into WrestleMania, send us your card. We want, again, remember the rules. Every title, WWE, World/Universal, tag titles, women's title, IC title, and US title have to be defended. Every wrestler can only wrestle one time, so your matches from your card get a little complicated, and you get 2 attraction matches. So that's an 8-match card, you know, because it's like we're booking our own shows. We always go long when we book our own show, right? That's kind of the joke there. And get those all sent in to tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Let us know what kind of cards you would set up. We're just curious as to that kind of thing. So who knows? Maybe there's a shirt and for the winner. Who knows? We'll figure out something.
Folks, are we going to see a match at 38 that knocks any of these matches out? That's why I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be looking for that match that knocks one of these out. I'm excited about WrestleMania. I'm excited about wrestling. Right now, I'm on a WrestleMania-related high. Professional wrestling is great. It's great for everybody. No matter what you like, there's something out there for you right now. And Georgia Independent Wrestling is on fire right now for anybody who is in the state of Georgia. So go find something you like. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Yep. And to keep it on, like I said, make sure you're doing those subscribes and everything like that, because there might be a bonus. Maybe your predictions. something like that this week for WrestleMania, on the WrestleMania show this weekend. Lots of stuff going on, Mo. Make sure you're checking it out. We're going to also drop a separate indie show this week, kind of spreading stuff out a little bit. But that's everything for the Ultimate WrestleMania Card episode. Send in yours, subscribe, like, review, all that good stuff, man. This is always one of our funnest shows to do, even though we try to only do it every couple of years because it does.
2024. We cut it again after WrestleMania 39.
Never know, man. You never, ever know. But, well, that's everything I have on my card. Is that everything on your card, Myron?
That's everything that's on my card, man.
Well, what's the old saying, brother? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.